A lot changes during perimenopause and menopause, so how does your exercise program need to change to be optimized for this phase of your life? Once you know the answer to that question, you can move forward with confidence doing the highest leverage behavior to put more years lived in good health into your future. You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 241, How Your Exercise Routine Needs to Change in Perimenopause and Menopause. Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hey, and welcome to today's episode. Thank you so much for being here. You are pretty great. I hope that you've had a lovely week. How's your understanding of why you want to pursue health? I think it's useful to always remind yourself that trying to be healthy, whatever that means, isn't something you should do because everyone else thinks you should, or because it will make you a better or more worthy person or anything. That being healthy is not an end goal or a symbol of success. Health is just a means to an end, something that allows you to do more and give more and show up more and experience more of what matters to you. It's not a destination. It's the vehicle that makes getting to your destination possible and enjoyable. Today, we're going to talk about the ways your exercise program needs to change at the time of perimenopause and menopause. As we reach our mid-40s to 50s, a lot of things in our lives can start to shift and change. What our home life looks like, our responsibilities, maybe our careers, our priorities, and definitely our hormones. Some women might start to have hot flashes. Others might only notice trouble sleeping or trouble concentrating, or mood shifts or decreased overall energy. Like it did when we went through puberty, a lot can change in a few short years. We've likely felt pretty steady and predictable throughout our 20s and 30s and even early 40s, but not so much anymore. As we start to feel like every week has a new biological plot twist for us, we, out of necessity, have to develop a few new skills by way of compensation for these revisions to our reality. Maybe keeping reading glasses in key locations, or strategic foam rolling skills, or elite level sleep hygiene habits. As we change a lot of our daily routines, we might start to wonder if we also need to change our exercise routine. Our biology is changing, so should our demands on it in the form of exercise change too? What's the optimal exercise for a perimenopausal or menopausal woman? I'll bet you can find some people willing to give you an answer. So how can you know that they're right? I know you don't need me to tell you that exercise is the number one behavior you can do to put more years lived in good health into your future. Of the 6 main things that are going to either kill you or make you stop living before you die, the number one thing to do to prevent or drastically delay all 6 of them is exercise. If you've been around here a while, then thank you, and you know that I don't want you to exercise. I want you to train. We talked all about it in episodes 66 and 67. Training is way better than exercising, but I didn't want to name this episode How to Train for Menopause or something, because that sounds like we're practicing for an event like a chess match or a bull riding or something. But most people call it exercise, not training, so it is what it is. Exercise or training improves your ability to utilize fuel well, which is probably the number one predictor of how healthy you're going to stay in your future, your metabolism or your metabolic health. It's huge. Exercise also reduces your risk of the number one killer in the Western world, cardiovascular disease. It decreases your risk for neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. That is very strongly tied to metabolic health. And it reduces your risk for cancer. It also boosts healthy immune system function, which is really important as you get much older. And exercise is obviously crucial for helping you to be strong enough to not fall and to maintain strength and bone health when you're much older. We could probably talk for at least 10 hours about all the ways training today is the biggest gift you can give your future self. And if you don't already, you can find ways to love doing it now. So it's not only an old age insurance policy, which sounds supremely boring, but can also be the funnest part of your day today. It is for me, unless there's a new Stranger Things episode coming out that day or something equally epic. Are you a fan? Did you like the ending? My 17-year-old son hated it. He reminds me of it often. He's not okay with ambiguity. Okay, so training. It's imperative, like monstrously important to your ability to be able to live and give more as you get older. It's absolutely the number one thing to do if you want to have more healthy years in your future than the average American does. Pretty much everyone will agree with that, but it's not just any movement that's going to give you massive results. You need to execute a well-designed program to be able to get amazing results. Which brings us to today's question. How does that training or exercise routine need to change as you enter perimenopause and menopause? Your body is going through some changes, so how do you need to change your workouts to match up with that? Are you ready for the definitive guide? This is backed up by some of my most favorite experts in women's health, longevity health, and exercise science. Dr. Gabriel Lyon, Dr. Peter Attia, Jeff Cavalier, and Mike Boyle. Get out your pen and paper. Here's the answer to how your training needs to change due to menopause and perimenopause. It doesn't. Good programming is good programming. You don't need something specifically designed for a woman your age or a woman at all. Your training program needs to be well crafted and suited to you personally, but it doesn't need to be designed specifically for a woman or specifically for someone your age. If someone tells you it does, or that for some reason you shouldn't follow a program that men follow, or that 20-year-olds follow, your BS detector should start going off. I think this is so good to know and kind of cool, really. With all the other things you need to change and add to your life now, like my eye doctor just told me I need to start doing a warm compress on my eyes for 5 minutes twice a week. It's not that big of a deal, but all of these little things keep adding up. So it's pretty great that having to learn a whole new training philosophy is not one of those things. Good programming is good programming. The end. The tricky part is that you have to be able to recognize good programming when you see it. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it has to include all of the important elements of a good training program. Those elements are the same whether you're 20 or 80, but 20-year-olds can get away with a lot of dumb crap that 80-year-olds cannot. The older you get, the more discerning you need to be because you have less margin for error and the stakes are higher. A 20-year-old who lifts with poor form might feel slightly tweaked the next day, but a 70-year-old could be out with an injury for a couple of weeks, and if she does that repeatedly, could develop chronic pain. Neither of them should lift with poor form. Neither of them should have a poor training regimen, but the consequences of poor decisions are higher for the 70-year-old than the 20-year-old. A 20-year-old who ignores training cardiorespiratory endurance won't be able to run as fast as her friends who do, but a 70-year-old is at an increased risk for an imminent heart attack. This is beyond the scope of today's episode, so if you want to talk more about it in the future, send me a message at healthcouragecollective@gmail.com. But let's briefly talk about the pieces of a good training program. I absolutely love the CrossFit definition of fitness, which says there are 10 components of fitness: cardiovascular respiratory endurance, stamina, strength, flexibility, power, speed, coordination, agility, balance, and accuracy. I think it's right on and something for everyone to think about. They say that you train for endurance, stamina, strength, and flexibility, and you practice for coordination, agility, balance, and accuracy. Pretty cool. Elite athletes in some disciplines sacrifice some of these things in order to specialize in their particular sport. But for the vast majority of women, I think it's the generalist approach that's the healthiest and the most likely to put more years lived in good health into your future. The way I tend to think about a good training program is that it needs to include strength training, especially for women over 40. You need to be strong and you need to have a large amount of muscle mass. This is very near and dear to my heart, and I could talk about it for days. You need to be lifting heavy things correctly. You just do. If you don't do that yet, that's the number one thing you need to worry about right now. Learning how to move heavy loads properly is the most important investment you can make in your long-term health, period. Once you've got a fabulous and functional strength training program going, you also want to be training for high-intensity cardio, low-intensity steady-state cardio, my least favorite thing to do, and mobility and balance. I think plyometrics are fabulous for power and agility, and you do want to make sure your core is being used in whatever you're choosing to do, but it's really about strength, high-intensity cardiorespiratory capacity, low-intensity, long, steady-state endurance cardio, mobility, and balance, and fun. Don't forget that. While it's critical to lift weights and get your heart and respiratory rates up, your programming should be something that you enjoy doing. Your training should be fun and something you can learn to look forward to and to feel proud of yourself about. The reason why I always say training rather than just exercising is that exercising feels like another chore to be completed, like scrubbing the toilet, paying the bills, or giving your guinea pig her IBS medication. You don't try to become epically good at loading the dishwasher. Well, maybe you do, but I don't. I just do it the way I've always done it, which I think is pretty good, and that's that. Exercising in that way is better than sitting around on the couch, but training toward a goal is abnormal in a good way, a way that opens up more opportunities to you than most older adults have. Training requires that you have a goal of some kind. Exercise doesn't, other than the goal to get it over with, I suppose. When you train, you usually keep track of some metrics so you can use to compete against yourself in the future. Watching yourself progress is the funnest part, so don't miss out on it. While your programming doesn't exactly need to change with age, your goals might. You still want to be strong and fast and flexible and balanced, but the older you get, the higher up on your list you need to move the goal to not get injured. Nobody ever wants to get injured, but it becomes more and more critical to avoid the older you get. Correct body mechanics all the time, and correct form when doing exercises, and the rate with which you progressively overload all need to be optimized for injury prevention. Do really hard things, just make sure you do them properly. While you don't need female-specific training programs, there are a few things that are different with female bodies to take into account. One is that men and women have a different Q angle. This just means that women's pelvises are wider, and so the femurs are at more of an hourglass angle coming down from their hips than men. Because of this, it's common for more women and girls to have what's called dynamic knee valgus, which is when the knees both collapse in when bending down, like in a squat or when landing after jumping. This has been a big thing for me. My knees have always naturally wanted to collapse in whenever I do anything, even walking upstairs. I've worked on it a lot, so I think it's a lot better now, but it's still a thing that comes back to haunt me on a regular basis. Those collapsing in knees put your body in a more injury-prone position, so you want to train yourself out of that. Women also usually have greater hip internal rotation range of motion, so their body can move in a way that a man's can't, which is another reason that they're more likely to have their knees collapse in, which can lead to other problems like foot overpronation, something else I've dealt with in the past back when I used to run, and increased tibial rotation. You can learn greater neuromuscular control by focusing on what your knees are doing as you go through different motions, and you can also strengthen your glute and hip abductor and external rotator muscles by doing clamshells, band walks, and bridges. I also read on Physiopedia that women who run have 50% higher risk of common runner's injuries than men: patellofemoral pain syndrome, plantar fasciitis, and iliotibial band syndrome. It's postulated that this is because of the Q angle and the greater hip internal rotation range of motion situation. Something else female specific that I think is pretty fascinating is that there are lots of studies showing that women's ligament tension changes throughout their cycle. When your estrogen is the highest, usually around day 12-ish, right before you ovulate, your ligaments get more lax. They're more loosey-goosey because they have estrogen and progesterone receptors, and when estrogen binds to the ligament receptors, fibroblast production decreases and the ligaments get weaker and looser. I'm sure there's a good reason for this, but I don't know what it is. I do know you have ligaments that hold your uterus in place and your estrogen levels go up when you're pregnant, so it might be a way to make sure everything can stretch appropriately during pregnancy. But whatever the reason is, 21 studies of 68,758 women in total showed that ACL injury rates were highest during the pre-ovulatory days of a woman's menstrual cycle. So it's pretty well accepted that you are at increased risk of ligament injury during those days right before you ovulate, so like around day 12 of your menstrual cycle. Other studies suggest that your neuromuscular control is slightly impaired when your estrogen is at its peak. So at that same time of the month, neuromuscular control is defined as detection, perception, and utilization of incoming sensory information to help perform a task. Basically, your ability to sense whether you are in the proper form and alignment and everything when you're moving. So back to that dynamic knee valgus thing, you're less likely to sense that your body is doing the thing you don't want it to do when your estrogen is at its highest. So fascinating. Something else female specific is that our hormones influence everything, which we just talked about. But in addition to increased ligament laxity and decreased neuromuscular control on a couple of days per month, around day 12, while men might have slightly higher testosterone in the morning, their levels stay pretty steady all the time. Even when they get older and go through andropause, I'm putting that in air quotes in case you can't see, their testosterone decreases very, very slowly over the course of decades. For women, we have estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone ruling our lives, and the estrogen and progesterone levels vary wildly, but predictably, for 25 years or so. Then at perimenopause can unpredictably jump all over the place. Then at menopause, fall off a cliff. This affects our moods, our motivation, our energy levels, our strength, and a bunch of other stuff. In Dr. Avram Blooming's book, Estrogen Matters, he said that women who do strength training with postmenopausal, meaning negligible, hormone levels do not have the same outcomes as women who strength train with more youthful hormone levels. Their muscles don't respond the same way, and their bones don't receive the same tensile strength benefit we talked about in episode 230, stuff I didn't know before about bone health. A 2019 study showed that stopping estrogen replacement for 24 weeks resulted in a 10% decrease in strength and an 18% decrease in cross-sectional areas of muscle. That's a lot. Too little estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone leaves your muscles and bones weak, for sure. So while good programming is good programming, your hardware is weaker and less able to adapt when you don't have the signals carried by hormones to all of the areas of your body that tell you to get stronger in response to your training. Something menopause specific to be aware of is that one of the common menopause symptoms, if you will, not really a symptom, but kind of, is frozen shoulder. It's common in menopausal women. My mom got it from writing on the chalkboard in her second grade classroom, which she successfully did for more than 30 years prior to her shoulders suddenly not being able to handle it anymore. So taking extra good care of your shoulders is something to think about once you're past your 50s or so. And maintaining physiologic young woman levels of hormones would also decrease the chance of that happening. Many women also get plantar fasciitis and other joint aches and pains showing up at or right after menopause. I hope this was helpful for you to think through and that you're excited about training intelligently. It really is a big differentiator between women who stop living before they die and those who are able to live and give more as they get older. I love that nothing needs to change with your training program because you're in perimenopause or menopause. You can just keep on being a badass and following an intelligent plan, even if it's taught by a 22-year-old man. As long as you recognize it as a good program, one that focuses on strength training and ensures that you move heavy loads in proper alignment, incorporates some high-intensity cardio intervals, includes some boring low-intensity cardio stuff. Don't let my biases turn you off to it. It is good for you. And prioritizes mobility and balance. Even though it seems so far away to have to be worried about falling, it's a really, really big deal. Like a loss of independence, freedom, and life as you know it kind of big deal. And the time to prevent that is right now. We didn't talk about foot strength today, but it's one of my favorite topics. Strong feet and toes help a lot, but strong bones with good tensile strength, not just high density, but that's good too. Quick reaction speeds to be able to catch yourself if you stumble, abnormally good balance, and strong muscles set you up for a life with so many more options than you would have if you were fragile and frail. Not to mention the fact that good training makes you feel fantastic today and dramatically affects all of your other physiologic functions that influence your health, like your metabolism, insulin levels, glucose levels, blood pressure, endothelial health, cholesterol, mental processing speeds, memory, mood, cancer risk, immune system function, and pretty much everything else that matters. Besides maybe your close relationships, that matters a lot to how long and how healthfully you'll live, but it isn't necessarily correlated with your training program. But it could be if you wanted it to be. Thanks so much for being here today. You are awesome. Next week, we're going to talk about something I've been pondering lately about how our beliefs are like bacteria and why that matters and how it can help you. Until then, exercise like a 22-year-old man and don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.